Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Eurocities Annual Conference 2021 in Leipzig.
So, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, a wonderful picture to see you in person, personally, at our AGM, our conference. So a warm welcome to all of you, dear Eurocities members, and welcome to this year's conference. Two years have passed since our last meeting in Prague. 2 years overshadowed by COVID-19. And so I'm really very happy to have you here in my city. It's so wonderful to see the Eurocities family back together again. And I notice you have to talk. And we are late and we can't start because everybody has to tell and make pictures and see friends. Using online tools and video calls cannot replace personal meetings and conversations. And this is the reason I insisted on organizing the conference in Leipzig in person. And it's great to see that so many accepted the invitation. I know that some of your journeys were more complicated than under normal circumstances, which is why I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. Thank you very, very much. Our conference takes place exactly at the right time. The negotiations of COP26 in Glasgow, they are in full swing. I've seen yesterday evening on TV the discussions. The motto, "The power of cities, transforming society," stands not only for our common strong efforts to back the European ambitious goals on urban ground, but also to present cities as front runners on that path. We have a responsibility for society, for the lives and the well-being of our citizens. We currently all face challenges. The pandemic, of course, the climate crisis, the changing faces of our cities, the situation of our inner cities, the danger to lost the trade and the communication situation, the implementing a recovery that is green and just, rising energy prices, the turn of traffic, as well as developments that shake the foundations of our European democracy. This conference will look into how the EU's strategic goals are translated and implemented in cities, and how we as cities can make ourselves heard. It offers a politically strong and diverse program, including debates with the executive vice presidents of the European Commission, Franz Timmermans and Dubravka Šuica. Overall, the response to the conference has been overwhelming, and I'm delighted that so many colleagues, fellow mayors and high-ranking national and European representatives are attending. This underlines the importance of our discussions on the focus areas of this conference: resilient, green, sustainable, and socially equitable cities. The panel debates on these topics will be followed this afternoon by workshops in which practical examples will be presented and exchanged. Tomorrow, we turn to the topic of democracy and the conference on the future of Europe. The renewed Leipzig Charta, adopted under the German EU presidency in 2020, pointed out the main principles of urban power for the common good. The common good, maybe it will be a very key word for this discussion. Building on that, the conference on the future of Europe offers an opportunity to open the debate about the collaboration we need between the different levels of government for a new approach towards a more democratic Europe. I look forward to inspiring debates and fruitful meetings. Unfortunately, the current pandemic circumstances still restrict our possibilities as host city. But we have done our best to make the conference successfully happen. So we won't be able to offer any study visits throughout the city, but maybe it's good because it's raining cats and dogs. But of course, want you to experience Leipzig's special atmosphere and vibrant liveliness. Maybe after the conference, you can stay 1 day or 2 days more. In order for you to feel at home in Leipzig from the start, a short film will give you an impression of my wonderful city. A city of music and culture with Johann Sebastian Bach and Mendelssohn. A city of science and university, the second oldest in Germany. A city of trade fair and economy with an automotive cluster. I think you know that. So, enjoy a great and successful conference. Welcome again for your stay in my city.
Leipzig liegt auf jeden Fall irgendwo im Osten, unterhalb von Berlin, oder?
Leipziger allerlei, Lerche, Thomanerchor.
Plattenbauten, wohin das Auge reicht.
Naja, Sachsen halt.
Provinz, brav, bieder. Das ist es. Mehr fällt mir da auch nicht ein.
Das denkst du von Leipzig? Echt jetzt? Ich wohne schon eine Weile hier und die Stadt habe ich immer ganz anders erlebt. Aber überzeug dich selbst.
This is where one of the largest terminal stations meets a tiny underground network. Even so, I can cross the city just as fast as I can escape to the countryside, from splashing around together at the lake to fitness influencers in the park. Here, everyone will find a quiet spot where they can leave their mark. Just like Johann here did before them, where people let their audience feel the music and create moments that will live forever. Well, at least until coffee the next morning. Where excellent food is much more a matter of taste and not the size of your wallet. Where the evening's entertainment can be as classically cultivated as it is booming and bass heavy. or where we do our own thing, with a cigarette and beer. Simply a place,
wo Liebe nicht in Schubladen gesteckt wird.
a place that's home to people who stand together for their convictions. Where the visual arts and the performing arts become cultural events. Where people are motivated to be at the top of their game. And where an explosive mixture of tradition and ambition has a home. Where we are already looking to tomorrow, today. Where we get stuck in together, work on new ideas, simply savor life. And only ever brew, build the highest quality. And of course, put it through its paces.
Ein Ort, an dem ich alles schnell
Und gut erreiche.
No matter how. And between you and me, where I can just put my feet up and really relax. In Leipzig, we celebrate our originals, see diversity as a guarantee of quality, love the landmarks that are part of our home, and pursue our ambitious goals, each and every one of us, every day.
Gar nicht übel, oder? Also warum Leipzig? Weil es einfach immer passt?
Excellent video, by the way. Thank you. Okay. So, dear Burkhard, dear mayors, deputy mayors, dear colleagues from cities across Europe, and most importantly, dear friends, good morning and welcome again to Eurocities Annual Conference 2021. I'm extremely, I would say, emotional. I'm extremely happy and privileged to be here with you today, finally all together again. You've said it, Burkhard. Reunited in person, yeah, after so long. Finally. Prague seems so far in time, and I must admit, till the last moment I thought, is it really going to happen? Is something coming up and we can't make it? No, we did it. And it feels like, actually, last night, it feels like we came out of the refrigerator, no? After 2 years, everything was like, the relationships were all intact. So it was really very, very nice. So here we are in beautiful Leipzig. The last time I came here, it was in November 2000, 21 years ago, time goes, when Eurocities held another AGM in this city. And the memory of that whole event is still very clear, crystal clear in my mind, because 2000 was an important year and quite special one for me, a year of change. So in a way, it's even more symbolic to be back here again now, another year of change. So this year's conference, when 2 years ago we started discussing, the Leipzig team on the title and the scope for this conference before COVID, just a few months before COVID, we all federated on one concept, on one main idea, the transformative power of cities for the common good. So not only this is the subtitle of the Leipzig Charter, but it is also something that we, the people gathered here, all believe in. If and where cities have power in terms of, formal competences, in terms of resources and means, in terms of recognition by the other levels of government of the city's role in tackling the challenges that Europe is facing, if and where they hold that power, they can, and they do transform society for the common good. Now, this concept became even more relevant after the pandemic, during the pandemic and after the pandemic. That landed on us like a bomb, yeah? You know that. No one was ready no one at any level. But after 2 years, no one can deny that cities that were the hardest hit by what happened, by this unprecedented crisis, they managed to hold things together. They showed resilience and capacity to deal with such a complex situation. And no one can deny that mayors have emerged as the real European leaders. Not the EU, not the national governments, the city leaders, you. Because not only you have been dealing with this incredibly challenging context, by the way, without the powers that we're talking about, not always, and that you would really need, but also because you are trying to turn this crisis and the recovery into an opportunity to transform your cities into more sustainable places. Sustainable in terms of green, digital, and of course, inclusive cities. And that is actually why, as you already know, this will be my last annual conference in my current capacity of Eurocities Secretary General. All these years you have inspired me, you have motivated me, you have given me purpose to my job. It's been so interesting, to see how cities actually can transform themselves for the common good. How they can be the place where vision blends with action and where the destiny of millions of people can actually change for the better. So that is why, even with a really crying heart, I have decided to accept to become a deputy mayor in the city of Bologna. And during the coming 5 years, if I survive, I will do my best to help the city to transform in itself for the better. Who knows, my daughter Nora may end up being an Italian Greta, telling me off, that I have betrayed her. So I hope that this new job will equip me even better to reply that we haven't done that we haven't betrayed the young generation. Now, as the leading network of cities in Europe, we have got a lot of work still ahead of us before cities get the power that we have talked about at the national and at the EU level, not to talk about the global level. But if we remain determined and united, we will get there. Because in the end, it will be about accepting the reality of things, serving people directly, working hard, hand in hand, with citizens. It is the only way forward. And cities, you are doing it already, and you're becoming better and better at doing it. And this is the only possible way forward. It's the only future for Europe. So let's continue our battles, each of us in their respective roles and places, and build the Europe that our young generation deserve and all generations will deserve. So I wish all of us a fulfilling time together here in Leipzig. And let me give a huge thank you to the mayor of Leipzig and the team that is here and has done a wonderful job. But also a big thank you, of course, to my magical team. Only God knows how much I will miss them and how much I will also miss all of you. So thank you, and let's have fun these 2 days.
Thank you so much again to the Secretary General of Eurocities, Annalisa Boni, for your opening remarks, but more importantly, for your leadership. And I think this is your round of applause again. I think we'll put your hands together. And if this is your last Eurocities, it's, I think, a very worthy one. It's a very worthy destination. Thank you so much again, of course, to the Mayor of Leipzig, Burkhard Jung, for your hospitality, but also for bringing all these people together after such a long time. Again, put your hands together again for the Mayor. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ali Aslan. I'm a Berlin-based TV presenter and journalist, and I have the great pleasure, the great honor, really, to be your moderator throughout the next 2 days under the theme, The Power of Cities Transforming Societies. We will pick up on many of the things that both Mayor Jung but also Secretary General Boni has picked up upon. Namely, we're talking about the most pressing and challenging situation right now that European cities, that you all are facing, from climate change to the pandemic, of course. All of that will be sufficiently discussed here on stage. This is a network of more than 200 cities in 38 countries, representing 130 million people, and we made sure that we make proper use of it here today and tomorrow throughout this session. The first panel is titled Sustainable Economic Recovery, Living and Working in Resilient Cities. Resilience, a word that has come up quite a bit here in the opening remarks, and which we will pick up upon now and listen to the accounts and experiences of many mayors and those at the front. First up, I'd like to welcome here on stage the Mayor of Tampere. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Anna-Kaisa Ikonen, please. Also with us is the Mayor of Munster, the beautiful German city of Munster, Markus Lewe, ladies and gentlemen. He is the Secretary of State of the Brussels Capital Region. Pascal Smet is here with us, ladies and gentlemen. All the way from beautiful Portugal, from Braga, is the Mayor. Ricardo Rio is here, ladies and gentlemen. And last but certainly not least, she's the head of Cities, Urban Policies and Sustainable Development Division at the OECD, Aziza Akhmouch. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Wonderful to have you all with us. This is quite a time, Anna-Kaisa Ikonen. I can imagine, as the Mayor of Tampere, you were at the forefront of having to manage this pandemic and are now in the pole position to ensure that your city is experiencing a sustainable economic recovery. What has surprised you about your city the most throughout this challenging time? How resilient did your city end up being at the end of the day?
I would say, in many senses, we were really resilient. I think it has been a very successful time, even though we have all faced very difficult times during the pandemic. Then I think we were able to innovate many responses.
What are some of the main lessons that you, as a mayor, as a politician, have learned throughout this challenging time?
Well, I would pick up, for example, our schools. When the pandemic came over us, the first thing was that we had to close the schools. The students went home, the children went home, and actually the teachers were able to overnight just make it the teaching kind of how do you say digital. And we learned still that we probably need to have more skills, more digital tools in the future. We need to be better prepared, but they were magnificent. They were able to just jump in there, and our children were able to continue going to school every day from homes. For example, this is one example to pick up.
Some people half-jokingly say that if there's a country that was sufficiently prepared for social distancing, then it was Finland.
Well, that was easy for us. Somebody has been joking that in Finland, we are used to having big distances, that now we had these 2 meters distances, and after COVID, we are able to return to the 8 meters normal.
Yes. Why break with old habits, right? If
indeed.
They come in handy, indeed. Mayor Rio, let me turn to you. Also, the question goes to you. What are some of the main lessons that you have learned about your city throughout these times, throughout the last year and a half?
Well, good morning, everyone. I think that we are talking about resilience, and I think that we don't become resilient from one moment to the other. We have to prepare things, and I think that this period showed the importance of having a midterm vision for the city and establishing the links between the actors, the local actors, that provides you the perfect response in every single moment. And what happened throughout these late 2 years was that what we did before was very useful, because we were able to mobilize all the stakeholders from the social institutions to the universities to all the local members to participate in every single action that we did. For instance, the youngsters were the main volunteers when we tried to supply goods for elderly people, to have volunteers in vaccination centers, in testing centers before that. And that capacity to have joint work was very, very useful, and that's something that helped us to deal with all these situations.
Mayor Lewe, while you're pouring your glass of water, let me ask you to take the mic. And was this the most? You're a very experienced politician, Mayor. Was this the most challenging time of your career?
I think so, but first of all, the pandemic situation is the first step of our challenge. I think in the relation to the challenges of climate change and climate adapting, it's a very small challenge, but we can learn about. And first of all, I think we can see how important identity is, the social resilience in our cities. For example, if the people get a feeling, therefore, that are the members of the city community, then I think that is the most important challenge for our city planning processes, for example. It is a secret of the social process of our city planning process. Have every people who live in the city, from the professor, from the entrepreneur, to the refugee, have the chance to get a feeling, yes, I'm a member of the city. This is so important. While the pandemic, so you need discipline, you need responsibility. And so if there is a responsibility, all, and each of other, then this is one of the secret that we get a lot of interesting solution. And now for the second step, the climate change and climate adapting, we have a lot of changing processes in front of us. So that is the thing. With also citizens, we are not able to create this. So this balance, the social balance, the economical balance, the ecological balance, is in the meta. Even this is the most important issue for us. And so our experiences, first of all, we are not safe. we have to create a prevention program, and the also most important thing, what is our issue in the relation to our young people, children, families, students. I think in Germany we forgot sometimes the young people. We often spoke about the old people, and then we tried to organize especially sporting programs with young people, but it was not possible because there are other conditions. So I think we have to look to the young people. This is our future, and this is also, I think, our challenges to create and to change our resilient systems.
Yeah, you certainly picked up on many important points that we will take a deeper dive now in just a second. But let me round up the first initial remarks here and bring you in, Pascal Smet. Brussels, of course, is a region full of internationals. You have the European Union, you have NATO, you have many institutions, Eurocities being one of them. It must have been weird, right, throughout the pandemic to sort of have that international element go away in certain ways.
Yeah, it's very weird. You know, Brussels is the most European, it's the most international cosmopolitan city of Europe, the second in the world. And as you said, all these international institutions are there, and they stopped working from one day to another. That means that you don't have national civil servants, international civil servants were no longer coming. It was a complete shutdown of the hotels, complete shutdown of the restaurants. So in a kind of way, the city emptied, and that gave a strange feeling. But on the other hand, there are still 1.2 million people living in that city, and what we saw then is that we are a strong city. You know, we survived already terrorist attacks. It was managed. We survived this too. And I think what it showed is that people have a real need of public space and good quality housing. I think that this crisis have shown two things. That is that a city can only survive when it has good public space where people can go out. That means, of course, mineral space, but even more green space, connected to each other, and also that people have their own private public space, whether it's on the roof of their apartment building, whether it's in a yard, whether it's around their house. I think that that's what absolutely people needed. And we saw that during the crisis, people could go out in Brussels. Contrary to other cities, we allowed that people could go out, and it was simply necessary. Another thing that I think that struck us most with this crisis is how much that this health crisis was a social crisis in Brussels. If you look to the people who were attacked by the virus, who got sick, or most of the time poor people, people living in immigrant neighborhoods, and less the rich people. So basically, this health crisis was against pushing us right in the face how important it is that in a city social equality is taken seriously, because this is one of the main reasons why it did go wrong. There is a social inequality in Brussels, but in many other European cities. So there are the two lessons: public space, good private quality housing, and a good social equality in the city.
Yeah, indeed. The need to rethink, if you will, in many ways, the design and functions of cities have certainly emerged throughout this challenging time. Aziza Akhmouch, you are heading the division at the OECD that is focusing on cities, urban policies, and sustainable development. What are some of the common themes? We have mayors from Germany, Finland, Belgium, Portugal. What is the common denominator? What's the common theme amongst all of them that you have experienced throughout these past 2 years?
So we've been looking at what 100 cities across all OECD countries have been doing in response to the pandemic in the very short term, but also in the long term. And I think there are three main takeaways that echo a lot of what was said here. The first one is that it's not the first time that the pandemic or health crisis generates rethinking about the city. All crises in the past have done so. The main difference this time is the digital revolution and the opportunities that this is opening, let's say, or accelerating in a number of settings, because it shakes somehow this assumption that this spatial concentration of people and firms in a city generating those agglomeration benefits are the main, let's say, driver for growth and the main engines for well-being. And if you manage to substitute some of that activity through the digital revolution, and there are many caveats, we'll come back to that, then this may open up opportunities for other types of places, in particular mid-sized cities, for example, or rural areas. So that shift towards a tradition in many European countries that was relying extensively on large metropolitan areas into something that is maybe a lot more polycentric is a first takeaway. The second one is that preparedness helps to build resilience, but that's not enough. We've seen that all the cities that had in place, planning systems, chief resilient officers, digital tools, etc., were able to respond very quickly in the very first instances of the crisis, but they still, and that's what made the difference, had to show a bit of creativity and agility beyond the traditional planning. And the third and last takeaway, which I think is common to all cities and all countries that have shaped recovery packages, is that there seems now to be a window that makes a number of solutions to transition to the net zero economy way more acceptable, including at the local level, than they were just 2 years ago. If you look at the cycling path, if you look at the local loops, this transition to circular economy, there's much less resistance, let's say, and much more acceptance. And local leaders were really essential in making that acceptability go slightly faster. So many lessons, but I would say those three takeaways is what we've seen from what we've looked
So the
at.
pandemic almost served as an impetus then to tackle many of the decisions that were probably been postponed for a while and now are taken on a much greater urgency. Mayor Ikonen, the session here is focused on, or titled, Sustainable Economic Recovery, Living and Working in Resilient Cities. What are the steps that Tampere is taking and has been taking in order to make the city, your city, more resilient, more in many ways more livable and worthwhile for all your citizens?
Yeah, let me tell you. It's working, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll tell you a couple of words about the city of Tampere. Maybe not everyone knows it. We are the second biggest city region in Finland. In the city, we have 245,000 inhabitants, and the region around 500,000. And we are the most wanted city to live in Finland, which is great. But it also brings us a lot of people moving in. We need to make a lot of investments, and it is critical that we are able to do this in a resilient, sustainable way. And I think this is probably, in the longer run, one of the biggest challenges. What we have been doing to be sustainable, for example, is that we have made this kind of roadmap to be carbon neutral 2030 with 236 different actions, for example, so that you were talking about being planned when challenges come up. We have been quite well prepared with the city planning, with the mobility, with the housing, with the energy production, with consumerism, looking at different sectors. We have also, as I left my budget proposal for next year, again, we put in the climate budgeting. We are budgeting both emissions and euros in it. So we have a lot of actions on that side, so that it's a part of the process, and we've been forerunners in that sense in our city. Just 2 months ago, we started our first tram line to make mobility sustainable in the city, for example. And we are continuing that, and also making the energy production sustainable and carbon neutral by 2030. So it's big steps that we are taking, for example, in this sense. But it needs. I think the resilience means being adaptive as well, and being able to adapt, and that's something that we need to keep kind of. How do you say? I would say that keep your knees flexible, so that you can always take a new, and not being, even if you are making good plans, you always need to be able to anticipate and be kind of, the cities need to be data driven. Follow the data, follow the anticipation data we see, and then react. It's
a continuous work in progress. There's no time to relax. That's for certain. New challenges arise every single day. I didn't know Tampere, most desired requested city in Finland.
Over 10 years. As you ask people in different cities around Finland, where would they like to move if they had to move from their homes?
Well,
they say that it's Tampere, and we are very proud of it.
There you go. Eat this, Helsinki. This is, there's quite a bit. I don't know if we have the mayor of Helsinki here, so we're not going to get into a diplomatic spat over what is the most desirable city in Finland. But that's between you and him. I'm out. At the end of the day, Mayor Rio, of course, Mayor Ikonen touched upon the thing. Being resilient means having to adapt, having to predict, having to plan accordingly. Give us a sense about the current situation in your city. What have you been doing for the past year and a half, past 2 years, in order to adjust to these new challenges and this new situation?
Well, first of all, I would like to stress something that was already mentioned here, which is the biggest asset that we have for sustainable recovery, which is people. People are a problem for every single mayor because they have ambitions, they have problems, but at the same time, they are the biggest asset that we have in every single city. And most of the European cities, most of the cities that we have here are currently challenged with demographic issues and with lack of supply of workers for their companies. And what we try to do was to strengthen our assets as an attractive city as well. Braga was considered in the Eurobarometer of 2020 as the third happiest city in Europe, with 97% of people saying they were happy to live there. And actually, yesterday I was talking with Thomas Fabian from Leipzig, and I acknowledged the amazing work that you did here to increase the population by around 20% in 1 decade or so. And in Portugal, for instance, Braga was already also the city that increased the most in the latest decade, when the population in the country was decreasing. And that is very useful, because to have talent, to have youth, to have people that are diverse in their nature, in their culture, is very important to have the sustainable recovery. And what we tried to do throughout these 2 years was to strengthen that attractiveness of the city, to increase its international visibility, because we are now attracting people not only from other sites in the country, but also from other sites in the world. We have received over 8,000 Brazilians in the latest years, people from all sites in Europe, because we want to have quality of life. We want to provide that to the people that live in the city, but at the same time to foster the opportunities for the economic development and all the sources of innovation. And that's what we have been trying to do throughout this latest.
Markus Lewe, the competition is quite strong on this stage. Third happiest city in Europe, most desired city in Finland. But I know that Munster, even before the pandemic, obviously was known in Germany as the bicycle city. People already were quite sustainable-minded. I can only imagine that has only strengthened throughout this period.
Yes, also the mayor, right? Every day it's 9 kilometers from his house to the city hall, and I like it. And so we have 7 green lines from the middle of the city in the outside order. But the philosophy, the idea is, who is the owner from the city? And so we get a balance between the common good-oriented city and the commercial city. And often I think there is a disbalance in our European cities. There's more commercial, there's more car traffic oriented. And so we have get a feeling how important open spaces are for movement, for sporting activities, for meetings. And so our cities get more and more people from other countries come to us, and so we get the chance to discuss another and to get a feeling for this and to get a feeling for the richdom of the diversity of our cities. But I think a very interesting aspect you came from my colleague from Portugal. So when we speak about the resilience, so I have one idea or one terrible thing and one terrible decision of the pandemic was the decision of our administrations to close the border. Never you close the border in the future. Never. I think we use common ideas and methods while crisis situation, but the closing from European borders is a terrible symbol that we are not able to come together. So this is, I think, our chance. We come from different European cities here and different European nations. I think it will be a good thing that our voice will hear in our national parliaments and also in our national administration. So this is the thing, how we can get a feeling in our city for health prevention, especially for young people. Not the numbers of hospitals and medical stuff is important, but how we can get a feeling how important sport is for health resilience, how important movement, good food is very important, regional, seasonal food is important, and this is also an idea of education. And every young child, every young mother must be in a space that the children are able to live in a space of a welfare situation. So this is one of the issues from our citizen, and I think. Often the citizen built big architecture houses and they spoke about Leuchttürme, light towers. But I think the main important light tower is the social resilience in our city. You can't feel it, you can't see it, but you can feel it. And so you can get a feeling in the atmosphere in the city. Is this a free city, a liberal city, an open city, or a closed city? And not the architecture, not the buildings, not the big buildings are important, but the atmosphere in the city that everybody gets the feeling, yes, this is my city. No matter what religion groups, what sexual orientation or other things.
Right. Munster is an open city, is an open-minded city. Clearly, Pascal Smet, we've already talked about Brussels being the hub in Europe of the internationals, if you will. Certainly that open-mindedness and globalism is certainly there. But we talked about, and we're talking about resilience here. Have the right lessons been drawn by the city, by the capital region? Is that something that you're observing? I understand it's still a work in progress. Obviously, nothing is concluded, cannot be concluded. But do you see that the right steps have been taken?
I think everybody's feeling a little bit the same. You know, in the beginning, media people, in the beginning, when the corona crisis came out, they were about to declare the end of cities, you know. It was finished, it was a kind of revenge of the countryside, you know. That was the place to be. It was safe there, it was green there, you had to be there. And if you were following, especially in Belgium, but I think in other countries too, it was really about declaring the end of cities. And of course, there were, you, I don't know you personally, but in general, the media.
I'm responsible for all the media.
No, I say you because you're
No, I fully understand.
It's like us politicians, we're always responsible for everything too.
Absolutely, that's the label we have to live with.
It was a kind of feeling that was there. And what did we see immediately after the corona? Cities are back.
Yeah.
You know, people wanted to be in cities. People want to go out, cultural places, want to go to meet each other. Even people are bored of this digital Zoom, WebEx meetings, all that kind of stuff. They want to interact. And of course, people will continue to work at home 1-2 days a week, but they need this interaction. So the first thing I think that we all learned is that cities are not that they have a very functional, crucial role to play in an economy and a cultural, social well-being of a country. That's one thing. Second thing, I think in a city like Brussels, which is a little bit atypical, so international, you see that the influence of social media is very important. If we look, for instance, to the vaccination, we have in Brussels some issues about it because we have large immigrated communities, and then you see the influence of the French social media on the French-speaking Moroccan people in the city. Same for the African, where they say don't get vaccinated, and you have a kind of parallel circuit of communication that's going on in cities, which is very difficult for an official public authority to counterbalance. So that is the second lesson that we had to learn, is how in an international city as we are affecting and connecting with all the people. A third thing I would like to say on that, and that's for us the most crucial thing, the lesson we have to learn, and we have learned, and is that 1 out of the 2 people in Brussels don't have a medicine, a personal doctor, you know. And if we compare, for instance, with the Flemish region, which is in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, there nearly everybody has a personal doctor. And so in a city, I think it's so important that everybody has his own medical personal doctor, a kind of confidence person who can convince things. And for me, that is one of the things that we have to do in Brussels the most now, is develop this, that you can connect to people, especially people with lower incomes, because I'm coming back to that again. We see that there is an issue about people who don't have access, who didn't have access to education. The social inequality is those who are affected the most and who need this public health system more. So that's a big lesson for us that we have to take to the future, is to make a kind of network of individual, very local, based medical services that we are lacking today.
Aziza Akhmouch, the city is back, says Pascal Smet, the comeback of the city that was left for dead by journalists like me, but now it is making a strong comeback. It is serving a purpose. Is that also something that you're feeling?
Absolutely. I mean, I think in the very first phase of the pandemic, we heard really crazy things about density being the problem, which actually was not even true. If you take New York, for example, you had a much higher rate of death in the Bronx than Manhattan that is denser. Why? Because you have better healthcare and infrastructure facilities. You have many Asian countries that have managed basically at city level to contain the pandemic because there was a long-lasting culture to deal with these types of issues. So we saw indeed that people, as one could have anticipated, are not leaving cities. Why? Because they, even if they ask themselves the question of, am I living here because I have chosen to, or because I have to? And if the have to, basically it's I have to work and have access to jobs and productivity. Even if they ask that question, and that's legitimate, they realize that they're not agglomerating in cities just for jobs and productivity, because otherwise, indeed, we would have seen what you were saying, people would have just moved to other locations and started teleworking. They are agglomerating in cities because of the amenities that cities are providing, because of the services that cities are providing, because of the well-being, the material and non-material conditions that cities are providing. And there, I think there are 2 interesting takeaways from this crisis. The first one is this shift towards more attention to accessibility. So this is what we've been hearing, you know, the 10-minute city in Brussels has existed for a while, 15-minute city all over the place, 20-minute city in Melbourne, and this idea that within a decent, you know, neighborhood, we should have access to health, education, transport, everything that matters to me as an urban dweller. And the flip side of that coin is the discussion around inequality, because if you don't connect those new forms of accessibility and neighborhoods to the immediate neighborhoods and the hinterland, you are creating new forms of spatial segregation. And what this city showed, this crisis showed as well, is that it has been an eye-opener, a magnifier of all forms of inequality in cities. If you take countries like France today, you have between 10 and 12 million poor people. This is the social bomb that is going to hinder growth, that is going to make the transition very hard to achieve in terms of greening our economies and our policies. And if we don't tackle that inequality issue, you know, in parallel to the green, digital, and other forms of agenda, then we are letting those hot potatoes aside that can become major bottlenecks in the future. So, yes, cities are there to stay. They need to be better connected in that polycentricity, and we need to pay attention to both well-being and inequality in particular.
And if that inequality is not being properly addressed, then we cannot speak of a just and sustainable recovery, economic recovery, which of course is what we've been talking about here. Mayor Ikonen, to round it up, we've been talking about how cities have become or trying to become more resilient. We've talked about how to create more sustainable and inclusive cities based on the experience of the past 2 years, how we might perhaps even have to rethink the function and design of cities to meet the needs of the people. Obviously, all cities represented here on stage, but obviously here in the audience as well, they all have their own distinct flavor, they have their distinct challenges and distinct makeup. But what are some of the lessons that you have learned as the mayor of Tampere that perhaps can be applicable to all your colleagues here?
I think at this moment we have to look towards the future and think of what we have learned. Some of it, we were just talking about working, for example, and whether cities are desired places to live in the future. I think what this coronavirus time has taught us is that we are less dependent on one place now that we are going towards more digital time. And that's something that we should look at. How do we, it's not only that people would move to the countryside. As a city, we have kept growing even during the corona times. And we think that we have been able to offer some of the possibilities to work remotely, to develop the city, to offer, even though we are a city, we have large nature areas and biodiversity. People have started to value this even more. So we need to look at that we have the green all around us and people have nature nearby. And they are looking for possibilities to study, to work, to build their life, to have culture and free time activities. But besides that, the meaning of nature is growing, and that's something I think we need to, as all cities, look at even more. Of course, we have the challenges that the corona times have brought up. Mental health, I think loneliness, many of these things that we need to kind of grab on and find solutions. Then again, I think there are many new possibilities for growth for businesses, just to look at that. And also when it comes to tourism, I think now we are going to a new time of tourism, and how do we combine these things? We all probably have, well, I think in Europe you have much better flight connections already. We are still struggling a bit having the flight connections up, but when we do that, I think also combining the nature here and the sustainability, for example, in that thinking, because I think now we have been talking about the coronavirus crisis, but probably, as you mentioned, the biggest crisis we have at this moment is the climate crisis, and we need to fight that in all that we do. How do we also, we are a city of sports, of culture, of events. How do we do all the big events? Welcome to the World Championship of Ice Hockey to Tampere next spring, for example. We want to make these big happenings sustainably and be the kind of sustainable destination. And that's probably, I believe that all of us are organizing different events. How do we do that, for example, sustainably?
Absolutely. Even an event like this today, of course, is not free of challenges in pulling it off. But I take it, I sense that you are optimistic that the right conclusions have been drawn and that the future of cities is a bright one.
Yeah, of course we have a lot of challenges But I believe that with a positive attitude and with looking at the solutions, we will get there much better than dwelling in problems. So I think let's look ahead and take the possibilities that are in the air right now.
And looking ahead is what we're trying to do here, of course, in this final round. Mayor Rio, also your future vision and about the next steps, if you will, in implementing all the good advice and collected wisdom that we have heard here on stage, implementing them into real life. That's something that is probably the main challenge for you in the coming years, no?
Aziza mentioned a topic that is very interesting, this dialectics between the well-being, the fight against inequalities, and the OECD for a couple of years now has, for instance, the Champion Mayors Network for Inclusive Growth, in which these two dimensions are already connected before the pandemic. So I think that what is crucial for cities and for every single territory is to have this holistic approach in which each of these dimensions are connected, in which the policies are focusing in all these subjects, not only the economic development, but also the inclusiveness, and also sustainability in terms of environmental issues, the governance. And I'm a big fan of the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm a member of the Committee of the Regions, and we have been working together with many networks, including OECD as well, Eurocities, Urbact. And I think that we need that pragmatic approach in which we monitor the goals that we are pursuing, but at the same time we assess the way we are achieving those goals or not. And to have that type of connection between specific goals, the political initiatives that we develop, and the continuous monitoring is very important to mobilize all the society and to obviously have better results in the development of our cities.
We're all free from problems and challenges here, but you're optimistic, I sense it also, about the tough time and road ahead of recovery that we're all in. Actually, it is an ongoing process now.
I am, and I will be as much optimistic as the cities do have in each of the countries, as much power, as much resources as they need to fulfill their capacity, because what has been shown throughout the pandemic, once again, is that when we take the lead, when we mobilize the society, we can achieve the results and the better results. Like Anna-Lisa said, cities had been in the lead, and I think that's a very important issue for the future, and that will, in a sense, be the condition to be more optimistic or no, is in each of the countries the level of decentralization that we assess, the way that we have more resources and more competences at the city level.
Pascal Smet, the cities are in the lead, certainly something that we have heard from the Secretary General. It's not nations, not international institutions, it's cities that have stepped up throughout this time. Now, of course, the limelight is on you, though. Doesn't come without pressure.
No, but I think we are all in the lead. I mean, it would be a mistake to put nation states against cities, against regions. We have to do it together. And of course, cities are a core part of it. So don't put us in that competition thing. I think that's a wrong thing. But yes, cities have an important role to play. But you know, before the corona crisis, we were seeing in European cities lots of phenomena going on. The reducing the space for cars, for instance. All these car-oriented cities were becoming more cities for people. We were seeing that the importance of green space in a city, and a kind of thinking a city in the garden, kind of the Singaporean way of looking into cities. We were seeing all these issues of living together. And what finally the corona crisis has done is just confirm this. It was a catalyst, and it created a lot of political momentum. I'm seeing in all these European cities where you had in the past a lot of opposition of reducing the space for the car, of more people-oriented city. This has all gone away. I think we have now a lot of political momentum to grasp on. And what we in Brussels want to do now is to change our urbanistic rules. We have to grasp this moment, and we have to put it not in our mouth, but also in the legal test, and we call it the good living. We want to change the paradigm in the way that we are going to develop the city. That is much less space to the car. We made terrible mistakes in the 50s and the 60s and the 60s, but also start from the point that the open space that you have is the departing point. And of course, we still need to densify in cities, because if we want to stop the urban sprawl, then cities have to densify, but in a very intelligent way. And so that's the thing we want to do for the public thing. And second, absolutely again the housing. I think one of the biggest challenges that most European cities are facing is affordable housing and good quality affordable housing. That's going to be a major issue because we are seeing a big contradiction. Young people want to stay in cities, but they cannot afford anymore to stay in cities. And so you get cities of a dual nature, poor people and very rich people. And that's not the kind of city we want in Europe. So this affordable social housing issue is much important. And finally, I think we as Europeans, we have something to export to, you know. We're living in a world where the power is shifting from the traditional Western world, American, European world, more to the Asian world, and we can better understand that is happening. And you see the Chinese and others getting more influential in exporting their model. But we finally, with the Corona crisis, have shown that the model of European cities, that's the model. So I think that we as European cities, as part of the European Union, we have this major world role to play to export our city model of living together and be more proud of it and more assertive, not aggressive, but assertive on it. And I think we are not doing that enough. So I think that the Committee of the Region, of which I'm a member too, which we, well, once met together, I think physically, that will come back too. You need, lots of things. So that we have with the European Commission, the European Committee of the Region, OECD, all these things, we have to export this European model of cities which finally proven in the Corona crisis, that's the model. It's not the American model, it's not the African, the Asian model of cities, of mega cities, it's our livable cities. So let's continue and let's grab this political moment, because I have a feeling in politics it's all about media, money and momentum. And I think we have the media now, we have the momentum, the money, I don't know, I think we have all issues on that. But anyway, the two M's are already there, so let's grasp that.
Well, I tell you, please. Well, I tell you what, and I think I speak for all, I think if everybody in the Brussels Capital Region has your energy and enthusiasm, I'm not concerned about the future of your city, that's for certain. Mayor Lewe, yes, even Mayor Jung agrees. I think that it radiates and it's well presented. Mayor Lewe, also to round up this panel, get your final remarks, get your final words about the future, your future vision for the city of Munster. You've already talked about that. You want to continue to be an open city in more than one way. You want the cohesion of your city to be strengthened. Those are not easy tasks, but something that you work on a daily basis, of course.
First of all, I need a debate about the future, not only for election time, but for 30 years or 40 years. This is not only the challenge, climate change, climate adapting. So between 1960 and 1968, a lot of people were born. What will be with the old people then? What we will with the prevention program, with the HEALS program? Nobody talk about this. Who can finance this? I think these are things we have to look in a macro determination. We have looked to the whole things, and this is the first step to plan the future. So also in our city we have a future process, Munster Zukunft 2040, with the scenario analysis and other things, a high participation frame. And the next step is all the challenges we have. We can't get answers with our slowly administration. Sectoral administration, slowly justice, and so we need cross-cutting administration. We need more fast processes. For example, if we rebuild. If we build a new mobility concept, how long we need for railway trains, 20 years, 30 years, how we can get mobility change if it is so slowly. Power lines for ecological power, 20 years, 30 years, it is unbelievable. So we need this. And this is also, I think, we have to work together with our citizens in Europe to organize this. We have to organize a frame of trust. We spoke about the social media. If we get a frame of trust, then it's the most important question, who believes the people, the administration, the politician, or the bullshit from the Facebook or other things? So it's also how are our information systems in our municipal systems. And one of the most important things is we are here in a network of European cities, and I think all of you, we have also very good ideas, solutions for the challenges of the future. But what we need is a network. I think we are much more faster, agiler than our state administration and also the European Commission. So now this is a time that we are able to get a network. I think we need, not only in Europe, worldwide, a network for good ideas, and the ideas must spring up like mushrooms. And so if we connect this, so we do it in our city with Rochester, and I think in future with Bologna, in a term of climate change and climate adapting. So this will be the answer of the question, who rules the world? And I think the mayor rules the world and the politician in the municipal parliament.
Well. The mayors rule the world, Aziza. At the end of the day, we've now throughout this session, we heard a lot of solutions, a lot of impetus and I think the thunders are not a bad sign. It's ignore those. But as someone who is working at the OECD on cities, urban policy, sustainable development, the OECD obviously as one of the preeminent international organizations has a pretty good overview of what progress is being made. How optimistic are you heading into the future?
I think when we see the energy and the very quick fixes that mayors have brought to a unique situation, we can only be optimistic in terms of their capacity to deploy those solutions in the future. And what we've been saying for a decade, that cities are the places where innovation, experimentation, close relationship with citizens, proximity allows for those test beds that can then be replicated and bring way more agility than, I agree, what we've seen in national administrations was really put into practice. So that's a very positive trend and a good reality check, because this pandemic has tested somehow also the capacity and the agility of local administrations. And I think on that we can be very, very proud. I think that there's, going to the local, national and global scale, there's probably one area at the very local level that may be further exploited in the future, which is the capacity of local leaders and urban dwellers to revisit their relationship to time. I think what this crisis has shown is also the way we can play with chrono-urbanism to put less pressure on public services, on energy and natural resources, and to synchronize in a completely different way what we do on a daily basis. Do we have all to agglomerate in traffic jam or crowded transportation to get to the office at 9 a.m. these days? I'm not sure. How an infrastructure that is a bar, a school, a restaurant that has a specific function at a specific moment of the day can be used for other purposes at other moments of the day. And I think that shift towards more multi-functionality, multi-centrality, we don't have one single city center any longer, but many hotspots in the city that play this city center function, is something that we start seeing, experimenting, and that I think holds much potential in the future. Having said that, and as you said, I work with national administration, so I have to bring this footnote. It would also be an illusion to think that all the global transformation and risks we are facing today can be handled only at the local level. And I think mayors have been extremely realistic in that front as well. If you take the climate challenge, this is COP26, 80% of greenhouse gas emissions in cities, half of the production of solid waste in cities, 2/3 of energy consumption in cities. And it's been remarkable to see mayors step in where sometimes national governments stepped out, including in the US and the previous administration with the Paris Agreement. Having said that, only 1/3 of those urban emissions can be curbed through local action. The reality is that the vast majority of G20 countries are continuing to subsidize fossil fuels. And I think it's really rewarding and interesting to see and bold initiatives at the EU level, the Green Deal and so on, but much more needs to be done at the national level, and to put the accountability on national governments as well, so that local action is not seen as a substitute to what they have to do. And I think the Leipzig Charter, the Pledge for National Urban Policy, and all those, localization efforts of global agendas and the SDGs are going in the right direction of that shared responsibility. So they each have, bold actions to take, but many of those transformations, really lie on the capacity of local, national, and global to walk in the same direction and somehow align the planets as well.
And it lies, yes, please. And it lies and rests primarily on and with individuals such as yourself, of course, and also in the audience. Sustainable economic recovery, living and working in resilient cities. I think I speak for all when I say that Eurocities 2021 has gotten off to a very energetic, very lively start here. Also, Burkhard Jung, Anna-Kaisa Ikonen, of course, thank you for your initial remarks. Many of the points that you have offered and many of the impetus that you have shared with us, we will pick up, of course, and dive deeper in the subsequent panels, climate change, of course, being one of them. Let me just tell you that we are actually going to go for a quick break now. Quick break. I think we deserve it. Absorb all the great things that you have shared with us. We're going to be back here. Let me see. We're going to be back here at 10:55. That way we have made up the lost time in the beginning, and because we have quite an ambitious program indeed. Suffice to say, Anna-Kaisa Ikonen, Markus Lewe, Pascal Smet, Ricardo Rio, and Aziza Akhmouch, thank you so much for your input. This is your applause. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. No, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.